3 creepy, true motel horror stories. Highways at night feel different, don't they? Endless roads cutting through empty land, the yellow glow of streetlights flashing by, the radio playing soft static, and the thought that you're completely, utterly alone. When you're tired, desperate, and looking for a place to rest, there's always a motel nearby. Cheap, plain, and welcoming to strangers who will never cross paths again. But behind those doors and peeling wallpapers, countless stories remain hidden. Stories that people don't share at family dinners. Stories that live in whispers and nightmares. Tonight, I'll share with you 3 true motel horror stories that last far beyond the checkout time. So, lock your doors, turn down the lights, and remember, motels are supposed to be a place of rest, but sometimes they're a place you don't leave. Story 1. The Man in Room 6. Scene 1. Arrival at the motel. Sarah was a 22-year-old college student driving cross-country. The summer air was heavy, and her old car hummed along the dark Kansas highway. It was close to midnight when she spotted a flickering neon sign. Motel Rest Stop, Vacancy. She pulled in. The parking lot was almost empty, save for a single pickup truck and an old sedan. The building looked tired, with peeling paint and a buzzing light over the office door. Inside, the clerk, a man in his 60s with hollow eyes, slid a key across the counter. "Room 6, he said. His voice was low, tired, almost rehearsed. Then, almost as an afterthought, he leaned in slightly. "Don't open the door for anyone after midnight." Sarah laughed nervously. "What?" The man's eyes didn't leave hers. "Just don't." 2. First night tension. Sarah entered room 6. The air smelled faintly of damp carpet and cleaning chemicals. She set her backpack down and collapsed onto the bed, scrolling through her phone. At exactly 1:07 a.m., she heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, deliberate at her door. Her heart pounded. She remembered the clerk's words. She stayed still, listening. Then a voice, soft, almost pleading. "Hey, let me in. I think you're in my room." Sarah froze. The voice was calm, but wrong. Too calm. She checked the key. Room 6. Definitely hers. The knocking turned to scratching. Long fingernails dragging down the wood. Sarah whispered into her phone, trying to call the front desk. But the line was dead. The doorknob began to turn, slowly. She grabbed a chair and shoved it under the handle. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Then silence. Scene 3. Escalation. Sarah thought it was over. She lay back on the bed, eyes glued to the door. But around 2:30 a.m., she heard breathing. Not outside, inside. The sound of someone inhaling, faint but steady, from the corner of the room. She snapped her head around. Nothing. Just shadows stretching across the wall. The breathing stopped. Sarah didn't sleep. She kept her eyes on the door until the first light of dawn. Scene 4. The reveal. At checkout, she asked the clerk about the man. His face hardened. "There was no one checked into the rooms near you last night. But we've had a drifter comes around sometimes. Knocks on doors, whispers. He doesn't want a room. He wants something else." Sarah's stomach sank. The clerk leaned closer. "That's why I told you. Don't open the door. He's been seen at different motels for years. Sometimes guests who let him in, they're never seen again." Sarah drove away, her hands shaking on the wheel. The sound of that whisper burned into her mind. "Let me in." Story 2. The Cleaning Lady's Secret. Scene 1. Arrival and unease. Mark and Jessica were a young couple on a summer road trip in 2009. After driving for hours through the Arizona desert, they spotted a small, old-fashioned motel off the highway. A faded sign read, "Desert View Motel, low rates, clean rooms." The clerk barely looked up as he handed over the key. "Room 11, he muttered, sliding it across the counter. The hallway to their room was dimly lit, the carpet worn down, the wallpaper peeling. When Jessica opened the bathroom door, she paused. The air smelled strongly of bleach, like someone had just scrubbed it minutes ago. But the towels were folded neatly, untouched. She frowned but brushed it off. After all, it was just a cheap stopover. Scene 2. The maid's warning. The next day, Mark went out to grab food, leaving Jessica alone. Around noon, she heard the door unlocking. Jessica jumped up, thinking it was Mark. But instead, a woman in a faded maid uniform stepped in. She froze when she saw Jessica. The woman's eyes darted nervously toward the bathroom door. Then, in a hushed voice, she whispered, "Don't stay here tonight. Please leave before dark." Jessica's skin prickled. "What do you mean?" But the maid shook her head, her face pale, and quickly left, without cleaning, without explanation. Jessica stood there, heart racing, her mind full of questions. Scene 3. Nighttime disturbances. That night, Jessica told Mark what happened. He brushed it off as just a weird lady trying to scare you. But at 2 a.m., Jessica awoke to the sound of footsteps above them. Slow, dragging, deliberate. Except the motel was only one story. There was no upstairs. She shook Mark awake. He sat up, listening. The footsteps continued, circling directly above their bed. Then came a dull thud, like something heavy falling onto the floor above them. Jessica whispered, "There's no upstairs." Scene 4. The bathroom discovery. The smell of bleach grew stronger as the night went on. At one point, Jessica swore she saw water seeping out from under the bathroom door, dark, reddish water. Mark opened the door. Nothing. The tiles were spotless, the drain bone dry. But when Jessica leaned over the sink, she noticed something, faint scratches on the porcelain, like fingernail marks. Her stomach turned. Scene 5. The motel's dark past. The next morning, they confronted the clerk, asking about the maid. His expression hardened. "We don't have a maid that looks like that. Haven't for years." Jessica described her, but the clerk shook his head. Then, lowering his voice, he said, "Years ago, a man was murdered in that bathroom. Stabbed. The body was left there for days before anyone noticed. The maid who found it, she quit that same night. Some say she never really left." Jessica's face went pale. The clerk added, "You're not the first to say she warned you, but usually it's too late." Scene 6. Final night, the haunting. That night, Mark insisted they stay. "Ghost stories aren't real," he said. But Jessica couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., she heard the bathroom faucet turn on by itself. She tiptoed over. Water was running, red-stained. In the mirror, just for a second, she swore she saw the maid's face staring back at her, eyes wide with terror, before vanishing. The water stopped. Jessica screamed. Mark rushed in, but the sink was bone dry. They packed their bags and left that motel before the sun rose. Scene 7. Aftermath. Years later, Jessica said she still dreamed about that maid's warning. "Don't stay here tonight." And every time she checks into a motel bathroom now, she swears she smells bleach. Some say the maid was cursed that night when she found the body, trapped in the motel, repeating her warning to every guest who dares stay in room 11. But the question remains, is she there to protect you, or to keep you from uncovering something much darker? Story 3. The Neighbor Next Door. Scene 1. Checking in. In 2017, Alex, a long-haul truck driver, pulled into a lonely roadside motel in Nevada. The desert stretched endlessly around him, silent and empty under the pale moon. He parked his rig and stepped into the dimly lit lobby. The clerk didn't even smile, just slid him a key and muttered, "Room 12." The hall smelled faintly of dust and mildew. The walls were thin, yellowed by years of cigarette smoke. Alex tossed his bag down, grateful for any bed at all. But from the moment he sat down, he noticed it, a sound from the room next door. Not music, not a TV, just breathing. Slow, heavy, almost like someone standing right against the wall, listening. Scene 2, first knocks. By midnight, Alex had drifted halfway into sleep when knock, knock, knock. The sound came from the shared wall. 3 deliberate knocks. Alex frowned, sat up, and listened. Silence. Minutes later, again. Knock. This time he knocked back. Almost instantly, a voice came through the wall. Low, raspy. I can see you. Alex froze. His mouth went dry. He turned off the light, heart pounding in his chest. Scene 3, the voice in the wall. He pressed his ear to the wall. Silence. But then, whispering. Fast, frantic, impossible to make out. Alex grabbed the phone and dialed the front desk. There's someone in the next room, harassing me through the wall. The clerk's response chilled him. Sir, there's no one in room 11. It hasn't been rented in weeks. Alex slammed the phone down, blood running cold. Scene 4, escalation. He tried to sleep with the TV on for background noise. But around 2:45 a.m., the TV screen flickered, the static humming louder than it should. On the wall, shadows began to move. At first faint, like the outline of a person pacing back and forth. Then a face, pale, hollow-eyed, pressing through the wall as though trying to push into the room. Alex stumbled back, whispering, "This can't be real." The face vanished. Then, bang, a violent crash shook the wall so hard the lamp beside his bed toppled over. Alex bolted for the door. Scene 5, the empty room. The night clerk, pale and sweating, reluctantly agreed to check room 11 with him. The door creaked open. Inside, the air was freezing cold despite the desert heat outside. The bed was neatly made, the dust untouched. But on the far wall, directly across from Alex's bed, there were deep gouges, scratches that looked like fingernails clawing from the inside out. And written faintly above the headboard, in what looked like smeared ash or soot, were the words, "Let me out." The clerk shut the door quickly. "You don't want to know?" he muttered. Scene 6, the motel's history. Later, Alex learned the truth. Years earlier, a man had checked into room 11. Other guests reported hearing strange noises, banging, screaming, but when staff went to check, the man was gone. When police finally entered, they found him dead, slumped against the wall, his face frozen in terror. He had clawed at the plaster so violently that his nails were torn away. No one ever figured out what he had seen. Since then, guests claim to hear him knocking, whispering, begging for someone to answer. Scene 7, the final night. That night, Alex refused to go back to room 12. He left his things behind and drove off into the desert, exhausted but wide awake. But even on the open road, with the miles stretching out before him, he swore he could still hear it. 3 knocks, and then that same whisper carried on the desert wind. "I can see you. Naha doors closing, outro." Some motel guests check in for one night and never come back. Others never leave at all. 3 true motel horror stories, whispered across highways, repeated in hushed tones at lonely truck stops. Because you never know who or what might be waiting for you in the room next door. Make sure you subscribe to Dark Echoes and join us for more nightmares you can't escape. Turn on the notifications because the next knock on your door might be us.